The room wasn't designed for spectacle, but somehow, it became one. Marble pillars loomed over a tense sea of suited bodies and blinking phones. The House Oversight Committee chamber suffocating under the weight of what was about to unfold. The center sat Jasmine Crockett, expression unreadable, fingers steepled beneath her chin, eyes locked onto the man across from her like a hawk circling above a wounded animal. Elon Musk, unflinching but not untouchable. Not anymore, she leaned into the microphone. The room didn't breathe. You want us to believe this is about free speech, she said, voice quiet, sharp enough to draw blood. But what you've done is weaponize silence, and now the receipts are public. A flicker, brief almost, invisible, crossed Elon's face. Not panic, not yet, but the first crack in a glass mask. Flashbulbs went off. Phones vibrated as live streams surged online. The hearing had been expected to tread familiar ground. Algorithms, bias, partisan, moderation. But Crockett had come prepared for war, not with soundbites but with surgical precision. Internal documents, leaked memos, financial trails, and names, real ones. Outside the chamber, Trump watched from a private office, eyes narrowing, jaw clenched. Inside, the narrative began shifting. This wasn't a tech ethics debate. This was a forensic autopsy on the weaponization of power. Power that transcended tweets and servers. Power that shaped elections, silenced dissent, and sold American discourse to the highest bidder. Glanced around the room. Cameras caught the light in her eyes. This isn't just about code and content, she said. This is about collusion. With foreign powers, with political operatives, with people who think democracy is for sale. A cold silence fell. Something irreversible had just begun. The second hour of the hearing opened not with thunder, but with precision. Jasmine Crockett didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. A long table of staffers behind her slid. A series of exhibits onto the committee projector. Emails, digital logs, metadata charts. Crockett didn't look away from Musk. This, she said, tapping the screen, is an official request from the Department of Homeland Security. Dated April 12, 2024. It asks X Corporation to preserve platform data related to foreign bot networks, specifically ones believed to be engaged in election disinformation and the harassment of federal officials. She turned the page. Another email appeared. And this, she continued, is your team's internal response. Quote, back up the flagged servers and reroute all archive data to international nodes before review. There was a rustle. In the chamber, a low, involuntary gasp from someone in the gallery. Musk shifted in his seat. Those were server maintenance procedures. There was no intent to obstruct. Don't insult our intelligence. Crockett snapped. Voice still. .com, but sharpened. Data tagged for federal preservation was redirected to a server farm in Singapore, a jurisdiction where the US government has no subpoena power. She pointed to the timestamp. April 13th, 3:42 a.m., less than 24 hours after DHS made contact. Musk tried to speak again, but she didn't yield. Her tone didn't spike. But the force behind her words pulled the air from the room. You didn't just ignore a federal request. You erased the trail. She clicked the remote again. A flowchart lit up. Bot accounts, hashtags, deletion logs, all correlated to spikes in platform engagement from users targeting specific members of Congress, particularly those on committees. Investigating January 6th, a dozen usernames blinked on the screen. Some had profile pictures of bald eagles. Others bore slogans like 1776 Rising or Justice for Ashley. These accounts, Crockett said, were part of coordinated harassment campaigns, and you scrubbed the digital fingerprints while claiming to be restoring free speech. Musk leaned back, arms crossed. He opened his mouth, then closed it. A Republican lawmaker, Representative Barlow from Texas, tried to interrupt. With respect, this is outside the purview of no, it's not, Crockett said, cutting him off without even turning her head. This is about accountability. We've subpoenaed platforms before, but this is the first time we've had hard evidence of deliberate obfuscation tied to a sitting CEO. She turned back to Musk. What were you hiding? And more importantly, she paused, letting the silence hum between them. For whom? The camera panned to Musk's hands. They were no longer steady. Behind him, one of his attorneys scribbled something and slid it across the table. Musk glanced at it but didn't pick it up. Crockett tapped the mic again. We can pretend this is about bugs in the system, server, load cost cutting, but the truth, Mr. Musk, is that you made editorial decisions with geopolitical consequences. You gave cover to networks that dismantled truth, and when the government came knocking, you moved the evidence overseas. She let the weight of the words settle. A beat where I come from, she said quietly. That's not maintenance. That's obstruction. For the first time, the committee chair didn't bang the gavel to transition to the next speaker. No one wanted to break the moment. On social media, the hashtag vanishing data trended globally within the hour. And in Washington, the political temperature spiked to a boil. By now, the hearing room didn't just feel tense, it felt unstable, as if the walls themselves had overheard too much and could crack under the pressure of what was coming next. Jasmine Crockett stood slowly, not grandstanding, not raising her voice, just rising with the weight of something she knew the room couldn't yet bear. I want to shift, she began, from digital erasure to financial fingerprints. Staffers handed binders down the row to each committee member. Inside were flagged wire transfers, LLC registration sheets, and campaign finance reports cross-referenced with donation disclosures. Thousands of pages compressed into a single narrative thread. A new slide appeared on screen, a spiderweb of arrows, logos, and faceless corporate names. At the center, a non-profit called Liberty Signal Foundation, registered in Delaware, barely traceable. This shell organization, Crockett said, received a $6.7 million donation from X Holdings, charitable division in October of last year. On paper, it was for digital civic engagement. She paused. 3 weeks later, Liberty Signal transferred those funds to two super PACs, Freedom Horizons and American Integrity Now. Murmurs sparked across the room. Both PACs, she continued, ran attack campaigns against sitting members of this body, including myself, Representative Ocasio-Cortez, and Chairman Thompson, branding us as enemies of free speech and accusing us of colluding with federal censors. She turned her eyes to Musk. So let me ask you directly, Mr. Musk, did you use tax-exempt charity dollars to fund political retribution campaigns through dark money intermediaries? Musk smiled thinly, but it didn't reach his eyes. Congresswoman, I have no control over how those organizations allocate their funds once a donation is made. That's not illegal. Crockett didn't blink. Did you know those donations were routed into PACs that coordinated messaging with Trump's campaign team? I don't coordinate with political campaigns. Do you coordinate with Jared Kushner? The name hit like a slap. The room fell into a hush so complete, even the stenographer slowed her typing. Musk hesitated just long enough for the doubt to grow legs. That's irrelevant to the hearing, he said finally. Crockett didn't answer. She tapped her tablet. The screen behind her lit up again, this time a clip from a closed-door investor event recorded on a phone, leaked just 2 days prior. Elon Musk, smiling next to Kushner, raising glasses with a crowd of Saudi investors. A voice in the background. We'll bring the old man back online, quietly, in phases. Crockett faced the committee. This isn't paranoia. This is a pipeline from corporate funds to political attack ads, from free speech to silencing critics, and from foreign investors directly to us electoral influence. One of the Republican committee members, Representative Collier from Ohio, leaned forward, clearly rattled. Is there actual evidence that Mr. Musk was aware of these PAC strategies? Crockett answered without turning. The same way he knew which accounts to reinstate before Trump's rallies. The same way he knew which hashtags to bury the week the Proud Boys were subpoenaed. He's not confused. He's complicit. Her tone wasn't angry. It was exhausted. The voice of someone who had seen too many people pretend not to know what they had planned from the beginning. Musk sat still, jaw clenched. Outside the chamber, Trump's team scrambled. Communications aides called network producers, demanding they cut coverage. Too late. The story had already pierced the algorithm. Dark PAC trended across the nation by nightfall. Back inside the hearing, the projector shut off. Crockett sat down slowly, tucking the documents back into her folder like someone sealing away radioactive evidence. This wasn't a debate anymore. This was an excavation. And they had just found the first bone. The lights in the chamber seemed dimmer now, not because anyone had touched the switch, but because the mood had thickened into something opaque. An atmosphere you could feel behind your eyes. Jasmine Crockett didn't rush. She let the silence hang, the way a surgeon studies the incision. Before making the next cut, she turned the page in her binder, lifted a new document, and nodded toward the clerk. On the screen behind her, a pie chart appeared, understated, color-coded, but deadly. This, she said, is the current ownership breakdown of X Holdings, parent company of the platform formerly known as Twitter. The chart was clear, a slice in red, nearly 12%, marked Kingdom Holding Company. She tapped her pen against the table, once, sharp and echoing. For those unfamiliar, Kingdom Holding is a Saudi investment conglomerate controlled by Prince Alwaled bin Talal, a man whose wealth comes not from innovation or technology, but from oil and authoritarian governance. Musk leaned forward, eyes narrowed. I've already addressed this, he said. Foreign investment is routine in tech. Apple, Facebook, they all have it. Crockett didn't look at him. She spoke directly to the American people now, through the cameras. You allowed foreign capital to buy a controlling interest in one of the most politically influential platforms in the world. During an election cycle, a ripple passed through the gallery. One of the Democratic aides whispered something under her breath. On social media, the stream lit up again. #SaudiXPOSED.Crockett clicked again. A second slide. A series of direct messages obtained from a former ex-trust and safety executive. Names redacted. Timestamps highlighted. The messages discussed curbing anti-Saudi hashtags after the murder anniversary of Jamal Khashoggi. Team intervened to suppress global criticism of the Saudi regime. Posts were throttled, hashtags removed, verified users locked out, all without notice. Musk opened his mouth. You said you were defending freedom of speech, she continued, but you were just protecting your shareholders. He shook his head, lips tight. That's conspiracy. I wasn't involved in moderation decisions like that. Jasmine finally looked at him. You own the company. Silence. And yet the platform censored human rights activists, while elevating accounts tied to Saudi state media. Is that free speech, Mr. Musk? He said nothing. She tapped again. Another slide, a flight log. On February 14, 2024, your private jet landed in Riyadh. Less than 48 hours later, a major shift occurred in platform algorithms, one that deprioritized accounts tracking Saudi-linked disinformation. Would you like to explain that timing? It was a business trip with a regime that censors women, executes journalists, and jails dissent. He hesitated a beat too long. Crockett's voice dropped to almost a whisper, her words all the more devastating for their restraint. You've allowed authoritarian regimes to influence what Americans see, say, and believe, all in the name of profit. And you call that innovation? Across the room, a young staffer for a Republican committee member wiped his palms against his khakis. Even Representative Collier, previously defensive, sat back in his chair, eyes distant. Crockett leaned forward. This isn't about foreign policy. This is about platform sovereignty. About the borders we never thought we had to defend, the ones between truth and control. And you, Mr. Musk, crossed them. He stared at her now. No clever smirk left. No viral quip to tweet. Only silence. In that moment, even the reporters tapping on their phones paused. She pushed one final document across the table. An internal X memo marked urgent, dated just days before a controversial pro-democracy movement in Iran was wiped off the platform's trending topics. The final line, flag all non-aligned hashtags for algorithmic Riyadh is watching. Jasmine didn't speak. She let the document speak for her. A full 10 seconds passed before the committee chair cleared his throat, almost reluctantly, as if unsure whether the hearing should continue or whether the country had just glimpsed something it couldn't unsee. And somewhere in a high-rise across town, Trump's aides were frantically dialing phones, screaming into static. The Saudis hadn't just bought a stake in a company. They had bought a backdoor to America's voice. By now, the hearing chamber didn't feel like a legislative forum. It felt like the war room of a collapsing empire. Somewhere between the glare of the spotlights and the relentless exposure of digital evidence, a new kind of political trial had begun, one without a jury, just facts, cameras, and public memory. Jasmine Crockett adjusted the mic with 2 fingers, calmly, as if the entire nation wasn't hanging on her next words. We've talked about censorship, foreign interests, obstruction, she began. Now, let's talk about something more familiar, corruption, but not the kind that shows up in handcuffs. The kind that hides behind timing. She pulled a new binder from beneath the desk, sleek, red, labeled only with the date, November 11th, 2023. Behind her, the screen flickered to life again, this time showing a draft memo from inside X's executive Slack channel. 2 weeks before, Donald Trump's account was reinstated. She said, this memo was circulated among top content governance officers. I'll read the key section, dated and timestamped. Her voice sharpened just slightly as she read, reinstate Trump gradually after December, minimize backlash. Elon says Kushner will coordinate press narrative, emphasize neutrality framing. The sound of jaws locking echoed louder than any words. Even committee members who had rolled their eyes earlier now sat rigid, hands frozen mid-note. Eyes didn't move from her face. but his fingers curled around the edge of the table. "I didn't write that memo," he said. Crockett didn't blink. "But your executive team did. At your direction, and the same day this memo was written. You met with Jared Kushner in Doha, Qatar at a closed-door summit with Saudi and Qatari investors." She tapped her pen once, letting the accusation hang like a guillotine above the room. "The next day," she continued, "your public account posted, 'All voices should be heard, no permanent bans,' and 2 days later Trump's account, dormant for almost 2 years, was quietly reactivated." She turned the page. "You didn't just restore a voice, you restored influence. Strategic, timed, coordinated, and aligned with foreign capital." A voice from the far side of the chamber broke in. Representative Barlow foamed, defensive, loyal to the end. "You're suggesting a private meeting between two civilians influence platform policy." Crockett turned to him, calm but merciless. "I'm suggesting the timing of the reinstatement was dictated not by principle, but by private political deal-making. And that deal was facilitated by someone with long-standing financial ties to both the Trump family and your star witness." She gestured toward Musk, still stone-faced. Behind her, the next slide, Kushner's investment firm's stake in Affinity Partners, and its financial entanglements with Musk's ventures. $2 billion from the Saudi Public Investment Fund, $300 million in soft currency bridge financing to an ex-affiliated project, and then a handwritten note. Anonymous whistleblower, confirmed authentic, scribbled across a photocopied email thread. "He'll get his voice back before Iowa, just make sure the Saudis don't talk." A wave of unease rolled across the room. "This isn't coincidence," Crockett said, her voice quieter now, colder. "This is political resurrection sold at auction." Musk leaned forward for the first time in minutes. His voice, when it came, was low, restrained, but with that same Silicon Valley arrogance that had once brought him adoration. "You can call it a deal. I call it disruption." "I don't believe in censorship." Crockett's reply was instant. "No, Mr. Musk. You don't believe in accountability." For a second, silence again. And then she hit the mic one last time for the record. "Let the committee note, a former president of the United States, impeached twice, under federal investigation, and banned for inciting an insurrection, was brought back onto a global platform through a private channel coordinated by foreign-funded intermediaries. And the CEO of that platform now sits before us pretending that's normal." Trump, watching live from Mar-a-Lago, threw a Diet Coke against the wall. The word collusion returned to the national conversation, this time, with receipts. By now, the chamber no longer felt like part of Capitol Hill. It felt subterranean, like a tribunal buried beneath the weight of everything America wasn't supposed to become. Jasmine Crockett didn't speak for several seconds after the chair yielded. Her time again. She flipped open a manila folder with deliberate slowness, as though the next revelation needed permission from silence itself. "This next part," she began softly, "isn't about memos or funding. It's about the people who tried to speak and were erased." She held up a single sheet of paper. "His name was removed from the record, per Federal Protection Protocol. But you knew him, Mr. Musk. He worked on your Trust and Safety Council. His job was to review escalation requests for policy violations. He lasted 11 months before he disappeared." Gasps fluttered through the audience like wind through dry grass. Crockett didn't raise her voice. The whisper was louder. "This staffer reported a series of internal anomalies, decision reversals, ghost edits, restored accounts flagged for violent rhetoric, reinstated without audit. When he flagged these issues, he was told, and I quote, 'Elon said, these users are protected. Stay in your lane.'" She turned the page. More documents. He attempted to escalate the issue, filed internal reports, requested legal protection. The next week his access was revoked. His work email was wiped. And he was gone. Musk's jaw shifted slightly, but he said nothing. Crockett tapped her finger once on the page. "What your company did after that is what turned this from negligence to retaliation. You deleted his moderation logs, the only digital record that could prove he ever objected, and you replaced them with blank review tags, making it appear as though no issues were raised." She looked up. "That's not a glitch. That's not a glitch. That's a cover-up." A slide lit up behind her, a screenshot of the staffer's final internal message before being locked out. "You're not just restoring accounts. You're restoring a machine, one designed to target, distort, and destroy. I won't be part of it." Representative Collier spoke up again, this time more hesitant than confrontational. "Do we have confirmation this individual was coerced or threatened?" Crockett nodded toward the next witness station. The room turned. A federal marshal escorted in a woman, late 30s, tightly pulled hair, government blazer. She didn't give her name, she wasn't allowed to, but her identity had already been verified by multiple oversight bodies. She took the seat beside Crockett and placed her gloved hand on a stack of sealed affidavits. I oversaw his initial protective clearance request, she said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes flinched. He was flagged as a high-risk internal disseminator. Ex-executives had internally labeled him as a potential leaker and passed that information to a private intelligence contractor. She looked down. 2 weeks later, his apartment was broken into. No valuables taken, just his laptop, his backup drives, his hard copies. The silence was thunderous. Crockett stood again, slow and deliberate, letting the story marinate in the stunned air. This is where the freedom of speech myth dies, she said. When the people enforcing policy are silenced for doing their jobs. When the platform becomes a weapon, not for ideas, but for intimidation. Musk looked exhausted now, less warrior, more man cornered by the truth he thought he'd buried. Under layers of power and influence, the federal witness turned toward him. You built a platform that doesn't reward truth, she said quietly. It rewards obedience. Crockett placed a hand on the witness's affidavit, anchoring it like evidence in a murder trial. This, she whispered, is what disappeared when the data vanished. Not just facts, not just logs, people. And outside, in offices and apartments across the country, viewers leaned closer to their screens, not because they were watching a hearing, but because, finally, someone was telling the whole story. He wasn't supposed to be there. Trump had not been subpoenaed. He had not been invited. But that morning, as the Capitol buzzed with the fallout of Jasmine Crockett's testimony, a black SUV rolled up behind the East Wing and outstepped the former President of the United States. Phones exploded. Reporters scrambled. The moment was chaos wrapped in silence because no one knew whether it was real. Trump walked through the security checkpoint like he still owned the place. The committee hadn't been notified. Neither had the sergeant at arms. He didn't knock. He didn't ask. He just entered. And suddenly, the hearing wasn't a hearing anymore. It was theater. Jasmine Crockett was mid-sentence, passing metadata timelines from the vanished staffer's whistleblower report. When the chamber doors creaked wide, all heads turned, and there he was. Trump, in full force. Red tie, long coat, flanked by two vaguely familiar lawyers who looked more like bodyguards than counsel. Crockett didn't flinch, but her eyes narrowed. Chairman Reynolds slammed his gavel. Mr. Trump, you are not recognized. You are not invited. You are not permitted. But Trump was already moving toward the floor. I have something to say, he boomed. To her, he jabbed a thick finger in Crockett's direction. She's a blogger with a law degree and a personal grudge. That's not oversight, that's obsession. Gasps erupted from the gallery. The cameras turned fully toward him. News channels abandoned their split screens. Jasmine stood still. I'll allow him 60 seconds, she said quietly. What? Reynolds shouted, but Crockett raised her hand. Eyes locked on Trump. Let him speak. If the truth threatens him this deeply, I want the country to hear what fear sounds like. The gavel didn't come down. Trump took it as permission. He launched. You think this is about justice? He spat. You think you're the hero here? You're nothing but a mouthpiece for the radical left. The real censorship started under you, under Obama, under every administration that let tech turn into a surveillance state. He was pacing now. Elon tried to free speech. And you want him buried for it. You want him erased because you can't control him, just like, you can't control me. His voice climbed a register. You used your seat to dig up old DMI's security footage. Anonymous quotes. You're not a lawmaker. You're a leaker in heels. Crockett didn't move. She let the fire burn, and when the last ember flickered from Trump's throat, she picked up a single sheet of paper from her binder. I was hoping you'd come. The chamber froze again. You just gave me the final thread. She raised the paper. This is a calendar entry from your White House schedule. April 19, 2020. A private dinner with Peter Thiel, Jared Kushner, and Elon Musk. No press, no transcripts, just 3 billionaires and a sitting president. She took a step forward, and you know what happened the day after that dinner? Twitter removed its election misinformation warning label prototype from internal testing. The very next day, Trump opened his mouth, but it was a second too late. Crockett was already finishing. You didn't show up to defend truth. You showed up because you realized the receipts don't just end with Musk. They go straight to you. Trump's jaw locked. Crockett leaned in. 60 seconds, she whispered, and all you did was link yourself to the crime. Reynolds finally struck the gavel. Remove him. Security approached. Trump didn't resist, but he smiled. And as he turned to leave, he gave one last line, not to Crockett, but to the cameras. She's afraid of me. That's why she won't stop. But the nation watching knew the truth, because fear doesn't look like a woman standing still while the most powerful man in the world shouts to silence her. Fear looks like a man showing up uninvited, because he can hear the walls closing in. The lights dimmed in the committee chamber. Jasmine Crockett pressed the remote, and the screen flickered to life. Behind her the image froze on a calendar, entry just one line, one date, one private dinner at the height of a national lockdown. April 19th, 2020, she said, Trump Tower, no press, no public record, no legal obligation to disclose. Her voice dropped. But we have it now. The screen cut to grainy security footage, not from Trump Tower's official archives, but from a private staffer's personal phone, secretly recorded from a reflection in a service mirror. 3 silhouettes, one wore a red tie, one a black turtleneck, one thick-rimmed glasses and a half-shaved head. Trump, Musk, Thiel. There were no mics, no clean audio, but Crockett didn't need the sound, because what mattered wasn't what they said, it was what happened next. She turned to the panel. 3 weeks after this dinner, Twitter began what it called back-end compliance testing with DHS. But here's the part that matters, and we confirmed this with a subpoenaed Slack log from inside Twitter. She clicked again. Per dinner agreement, we are accelerating prototype scrubbing based on WH input. MT wants AI filters shelved indefinitely. M. Crockett let the initials hang in the air. Mount, Musk and Thiel. M. Elon Musk, WH, White House. Silence coated the room like dust. Then Crockett spoke again. This time slowly, deliberately. This wasn't just a dinner. It was an agreement. A gentleman's pact between power and profit. She stepped forward. Thiel wanted immunity for Palantir's federal contracts. Musk wanted silence on the insider sell-off before the pandemic lockdowns. Trump wanted Twitter to obey a beat. And all three got what they came for. The committee chair leaned in. Congresswoman Crockett, are you stating that a former president conspired with private tech executives to suppress platform governance in exchange for political and financial favors? I'm not stating it, Crockett replied. The data is. She turned to the witness table. Bring in Mr. Sheffer. The doors opened, and in walked the man no one expected to testify. Noah Sheffer, former cybersecurity lead at Twitter, turned whistleblower, pale, nervous, but defiant. He raised his hand, was sworn in, and sat. I was in the room when Elon's directives came through. I read every Slack. I saw the DMS. Musk didn't want moderation reform. He wanted revenge. And Thiel was the architect. Crockett leaned in. And what was the directive after the Trump dinner? Crockett nodded, then held up one more slide. An invoice from Palantir to DHS $3.7 million. Dated 2 days after the dinner. The dots were no longer dots. They were a straight, black line, and it pointed straight at the center of American power. One of the committee Republicans finally cracked. This is circumstantial. A dinner, a few D's. None of this proves criminal intent. Crockett didn't flinch. She turned to the cameras. Intent isn't always shouted. Sometimes it whispers in access, favors, and private rooms no one was supposed to see. She paused. Intent lives in who gets silenced, and who gets dinner with the president. Gasps rippled through the room. Noah Sheffer looked down. Was told to delete the logs. He added, I saved them instead. On a burner drive. He pulled it from his jacket. Crockett didn't move to take it. She just whispered, history just turned. The chandelier above the Mar-a-Lago dining room trembled slightly. Not from an earthquake, but from Donald Trump's voice booming, volatile, and filled with something far worse than anger, fear. They've got the drive, he shouted, knocking over a glass of Diet Coke as Aide stood frozen. Who let that freak Sheffer in the room? No one answered. A large screen flickered silently in the corner. Paused on the grainy dinner footage Jasmine Crockett had revealed just hours ago. Trump's face glared back at him, 3 years younger, lips moving silently as Elon nodded beside him. He turned away, red-faced. We told them nothing, just ideas, conversation. Musk said the DMS were encrypted. A trembling aide spoke. Sir, the committee has a digital forensics team. They're saying there's a full Slack log from Twitter's backend, timestamps, usernames, IPs. Trump froze. They'll never see that drive, he growled. He looked to his attorney, pacing in the corner. Send a cease and desist. Subpoena. They're subpoenas, call Clarence. We need a halt on discovery judicial overreach. Do it now. But Jasmine Crockett's committee has federal jurisdiction, the lawyer replied, careful not to make eye contact. And if Sheffer handed over physical evidence under whistleblower protection, there's no legal standing to suppress it. Trump stood still, then turned slowly. Then we hit the other way. A pause. Media blitz. Kill the credibility. Drag Sheffer through the dirt. Say he's a disgruntled ex-employee. Link him to China, TikTok, Hunter Biden, I don't care. Drown the signal. The lawyer didn't move. Sir, the committee is preparing to go public with a burner drive. MSNBC has already booked Jasmine for a primetime special tomorrow night. Trump's mouth twitched. Then he snapped, with both fists. He slammed the dining table so hard the silver tray jumped. You let this blogger turn the country against me. She was nothing. Melania appeared in the doorway, arms folded. Then why are you so afraid of her? Trump's chest heaved. She's a pawn. A headline. She got lucky. She got receipts, Melania said coldly. You got arrogant, and she walked out. Behind her, silence returned, the kind that always follows a losing hand. Trump collapsed into a chair. This wasn't supposed to go this far, he muttered. It was dinner. Just dinner. I gave Musk a platform, gave Thiel a seat at the table, and they can't even keep their leaks shut. He glanced at his attorney. Call Musk. The man hesitated. He's not picking up, then text him. Tell him this isn't just about me now. If that drive goes public, his AI project dies. Thiel's federal contracts die. We all die. The attorney nodded, walking off with his phone. Trump sat in the flickering light of the paused video. He stared at himself, his smiling reflection. Frozen in the glow of a secret dinner, a line from the committee hearing echoed in his mind. Intent isn't always shouted. Sometimes it whispers in access, favors, and private rooms no one was supposed to see. He reached for the remote and hit play. 3 men at a dinner table, laughing, scheming, believing no one would ever see, and now, everyone would ever see, echoing glass tower above San Francisco. Elon Musk stared at a projection screen showing rows of names. A-list. He hadn't seen it in over a year. It was nicknamed Project Crowbar, a private, untraceable protocol baked into Twitter's early AI architecture. It wasn't labeled that in any formal documents, of course, but every engineer on that closed team knew what it did. It didn't just shadowban, that it preemptively suppressed thought. Musk whispered to himself, why the hell would Sheffer include this on the drive? Behind him, a young AI ethics lead shifted. Nervously, you asked what was on the burner drive. This is part of it. An early experimental run. Internal labels. It scraped linguistic fingerprints from speech patterns, then auto-flagged accounts for limited visibility. Musk frowned. Based on what? The woman hesitated. Certain terms. Certain affiliations, keywords flagged as populist drift and social destabilizers. He turned slowly. Wait, you're telling me the system was throttling voices before they ever went viral? She nodded. And you didn't tell me. She looked away. That team predates your buyout. It started in the old regime, but you kept them on. A pause. The projection screen scrolled down. Political organizers, union leaders, minority, commentators, even a few sitting members of Congress. Most flagged Class B, visibility control. Musk stepped closer, scrolling manually now. He stopped at one entry. Jasmine Crockett. Label, amplification, risk, containment suggested. A single red dot pulsed next to her name. He shut the screen off. I need to get ahead of this, he muttered. Back. At his desk, he opened Signal and typed to Peter Thiel. They have Project Crowbar. The list. Crockett's about to blow it wide open. We need a counter-narrative. The reply came instantly. Thiel. Leak the list yourself. Frame it as foreign interference prevention. National security angle. Musk. That won't work. Too many Americans on it. Thiel. Then burn Sheffer. Musk stared at the screen, knuckles white. Musk. He's protected. Crockett's using him as a human shield. Thiel. Then you burn her. The chat went silent. Across the room the ethics lead spoke softly. You can't win this with spin. You built the machine, and now it's tracing you back. Musk looked at her sharply. What do you mean? She took a breath. I ran a diagnostic on the Slack logs Sheffer leaked. He didn't just upload documents. He included the voice print records. From the dinner, his stomach turned. Your voice. Donald's. Peter's. The timestamps matched the metadata. Musk sat down. The machine he built, the algorithms meant to predict and mold global discourse, had turned into a confession booth, and Jasmine Crockett had just stolen the tapes. She wasn't playing Twitter games anymore. She was writing the narrative of history, in real time, with him as her villain. He stood, pacing now. What if I make a preemptive admission? Control the narrative. Leak it myself. Say I shut it down. Say I inherited it. The ethics lead crossed. Her arms that only works if you're willing to admit you used it, and that the machine labeled a black congresswoman as a threat for speaking too loud. Silence. You ready to own that? She asked. He didn't answer. Meanwhile, 3,000 miles away, in a Capitol Hill editing bay, Jasmine Crockett sat with her, team eyes locked on a blinking export bar. The MSNBC special was being finalized. Make sure we lead with the blacklist, she said, her voice tight. 18 spoke. We've got AI experts on standby. They'll walk through the language detection model and explain the bias built into the system. It's ironclad. Another pulled up a side-by-side shot. Musk's dinner audio, overlaid with a flashing red flag from the AI dashboard. It showed Jasmine's voice being throttled in real time. Months before she ever called her first hearing, she stared at the screen, jaw clenched. They tried to silence me before I ever spoke, she said, a soft exhale. Let's give them a reason to hear me now. The sun hadn't risen over DC, but Peter Thiel was already in motion, sitting in a minimalist war room lit by glass monitors and surrounded by a half-dozen mercenary strategists. This wasn't politics, it was containment. Jasmine Crockett had crossed the Rubicon, and now, she had the list. She's going public with the blacklist, said one analyst. The clips she's got, they're devastating real-time AI bias. Musk's voice on tape, shadow throttling of progressive speech. It's textbook authoritarianism. Thiel didn't blink. She's not interested in court. She's interested in theater, which means we don't need facts. We need fire. He slid a file across the glass table. Inside, old law firm memos, donations, non-profit ties, anything with Jasmine's name on it. Dig into everything, Thiel said. Childhood, activism, legal filings. Smear her credibility, not her politics, her intent. Turn her into a chaos agent. One strategist raised a brow. That'll backfire. She's too polished, too righteous. Thea looked up slowly. Then we don't hit her a beat, we hit the truth itself. Within hours, coordinated posts began to trickle through anonymous Telegram channels and fringe networks. Breaking, leaked AI blacklist as a deepfake psyop. Exclusive. Crockett using Russian-crafted audio to frame Twitter. Jasmine Crockett's team linked to disinformation firm in Nigeria. The narratives were insane, deliberately, because the goal wasn't belief, it was doubt. By noon, the story had spread to Fox News, then OANN. By evening, Musk himself had shared a post on X. Curious how this leaked AI bias list only emerged after Jasmine Crockett's donors pulled out. Almost like she needed a new villain. The comments were feral, fake activist. She doctored the audio. Typical liberal grift.